Hi, and welcome to the Children's Post interview series. Today we are talking to Raman. Raman Shreshtha is the proprietor of Rachna Books, Gangtok. Rachna Books and Publications offers curated books for sale and is also a publisher of books in English. Rachna Books has won the award for the Bookstore of the Year from Publishing Next and the International Reading Olympiad Award for the Bookstore of the Year. They have also been felicitated by the Governor and the Chief Minister of Sikkim for their work. Raman has spoken at the Goa Lit Fest, Jaipur Lit Fest, the Brahmaputra Lit Fest in Guwahati, and the Shillong Lit Fest. The bookstore comes with a cool cafe and a bed and breakfast. In this chat, Raman talks about his journey as the owner of a truly unique enterprise. Welcome, Raman, and thank you for talking to us.
Thank you so much.
First of all, tell us about your journey.
Well, I rather restarted the bookshop about 21 years back after I finished my education, and I had a short stint in the corporate world. I'm actually a hospitality background educated person. But one thing led to the other, and my calling in life was to come back and restart the bookshop, which was there when I was a child. And one thing I realized about Gantok is that the youngsters were growing up without having a proper bookstore or the kind of access to books that were coming out at that time. And I thought it was only right for me to come back and do this. Of course, the journey has been long. It was one book at a time and one story at a time. But in the end, it's been so many years, and I'm glad that I took that step.
Okay. Why did you decide to take this step?
See, I mean, when I was growing up, like I said, a lot of things, I mean, were happening. Things were life. I mean, the world was changing fast. But one anchor I had was this bookstore as something which my family owned, and the stories. And when you grow up, and sometimes you rediscover these stories as a grown up, and then you think, where's the link? I mean, what's missing? What's missing here? And cable TV had already invaded our homes. The internet had already invaded our homes, but the books were being forgotten and lying forgotten. And I sort of kind of took it upon myself to maybe take up that challenge and to bring books to the lives of people in our community. And yeah, that was the main trigger. I mean, I wanted to stay back here. I wanted to be a part of this society where I grew up, and a bookstore as a bookseller is where I thought I would fit in really well.
Why a curated bookstore?
Uh, there's a lot of books being published now, and especially now when you see, it's so difficult to. I mean, every time I open my email, there's a bombardment of information about books, and for somebody who's in the trade, it's so overwhelming. And I can only wonder how much overwhelming it can be for a lay reader who has certain specific interests. And Gantok, being a small place, still has a very small handful of people reading or visiting a bookstore. And I guess it's the same everywhere. In the big city also, not everybody who dwells in the city goes to a local bookstore. But that number of people is so much smaller. So, as a counter to that, it's also a more personal experience for a bookseller to meet the readers who are regulars, and for me as a bookseller or somebody who curates books to make a more personalized selection for what the customers are looking for. Plus, I'm also armed with this knowledge of what vast kind of books that are coming out, which sometimes does not fall under anybody's radar because the publishing house is too small, and they don't have that kind of push to reach out. So that's where my role as a facilitator, as a bridge between the ideas and the recipient of the ideas, I come in between, and that's where they connect, I feel. I mean, I've got a very high opinion about the kind of work I do, but that's so be it.
Nice. What does a day in your life look like? What kind of life is it to be the curator of a bookstore?
It's It's a very interesting life if you live it. From the outsider, you may be just a shopkeeper. You may be seen as somebody who's been here all the time. I mean, it's immovable kind of a thing. I'm always here, and often many people ask me, "Don't you get bored sitting at one place?" I mean, I live upstairs, and my bookshop is here, so it's like even I don't even have to step out of the house. But every day is different. Every new customer or every new person who walks into the bookstore is different, and I get excited by the idea that this person has one lifetime of story behind him. So each person is a story, and here I am peddling stories all the time. I'm hustling books, I'm hustling stories, I'm peddling stories all the time. So every individual is new. If, so I have to be prepared with what kind of conversation I might have. There's no way you can prepare yourself for that really, but conversations, stories, this is what we are dealing with all the time. And every day reveals so many new stories. Like it's like going to a children's section, picking up one picture book and finding that it talks about a certain thing, and then there's the next one which talks about another thing. It's a totally different universe altogether. So each day is different, but like I said, I mean, because you're in one place all the time, you also sort of, if you do your job well in running what you're doing, in whatever job you do as a bookseller or whatever you do, at least in my case, if you do your job well, then you become the destination. You become the reason for which people will travel to you. So it's not so much about how many countries have you traveled to, which people may ask me. But my answer is, look at the number of people from this many countries that have visited us.
How
So you
nice.
end up becoming a destination.
How
So your
nice.
role becomes a little bigger. You feel, I mean, you feel proud that you're representing your country, your community, your state, your town, even your neighborhood
Wonderful.
by doing what you're doing and doing it right.
Wonderful.
So that's what a day in a life is like. You stay put, you just do things. I mean, things are not easy all the time. Books are difficult to sell. It's not a fast moving item. Your life can be slow, but with that slowness you get time to observe things around you, to read, maybe read a little more, few more books. But not everything has to be in a rush.
Nice. How do you decide whether you're going to keep a book?
I've been doing this for so long, and even as a child, when this bookstore was in with us, I have seen a lot of books come and go, and even after, and of course the bookshop was closed for over a decade, and that's when we were still getting catalogs from the distributors and publishers, and I would love going through that, and without having really known during my senior school days or during my college days that eventually I would end up running a bookshop. I never planned that, but I was aware of what was going on in the industry and what kind of books were coming out, what books were being talked about. And finally, I mean, now I've been doing this for so long that this whole, it's a culmination of your lifetime of knowledge. So it all comes down to gut instincts. I can't read all the books. It's impossible. People think I've read all the books that's there in the bookstore, but that's not possible. Your gut instinct, what your heart tells you about a book, when you hold it in your hand, when you see the plot, when you read the back cover or you read a few pages, what it tells you, it helps me choose whether I want to keep that book or not. Most importantly, whether I would like to read this book or not. That's one good measure to go by. But also now in the industry, I mean, there's so much of books that are coming out which are, I mean, it's not even like, let's just say, let's put it this way, that it's easier to keep books out than to bring books in. So once you know which books to keep out, your curation is, your job as a curator is so much easier.
So, how do you decide which books to keep out?
Uh, It all boils down to gut instinct, and when you hold a book in your hand, it's easier for me to know whether I decide on whether I would like to read that or not, or based on my knowledge of my readers, whether this book would suit some person.
So, how do you decide which books to keep out?
It's it's very it's difficult to say. I don't want to name names. People know those who know what books they come looking for and they don't find. But now the way the industry is bringing out the books, it's become more of a commodity than it is about reading an experience. And with the kind of mass market books that have been coming out, and with a lot of this flash in the pan, I mean, everybody's just looking for that next big thing, and in the process they forget the kind of books from the past which have endured the test of time to have, and these books which have brought us this far, our humanity and our thinking. Those kind of books are getting scarcer and scarcer. So once you see that, you just know which books to keep out, and that helps your curation get even better.
Okay. So, for our readers watching this, for a child watching this, what kind of a child would be happiest following your path, becoming a bookstore person?
uh, People who love reading, obviously. I mean, you have to have the love for books. I wasn't really very outdoorsy kind of a kid. So, but again, surprise of surprises, none of my friends remember me as a reader too.
Okay.
So you just find your path, I mean, it's such a great joy being in company of books. Like I said, it's not possible to read them all. But imagine each of these book is a different universe, and it's whispering to you, come pick me up. So if you love the company of stories, of books, if you love meeting people, if you love challenges of uh, running a business, if you love, if you think you are fiercely independent, you have a mind of your own, and if you think you can change the world, with a bookstore, you may not change the world, but you'll change a lot of minds who will go on to change the world. So you are always there as a bridge.
How lovely. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you so much.